The pattern. The abandoned observatory on the outskirts of Lumina's technological district had been Dominic's sanctuary for nearly a century. Its massive, cracked dome no longer tracked the stars, but it offered something more valuable than astronomical data: solitude. Tonight, however, solitude eluded him. His thoughts kept returning to Naira and her peculiar observations. 3 consecutive evenings of their research meetings had left him uncharacteristically unsettled. Dominic paced across the observatory's dusty floor, his footsteps stirring motes that danced in the shafts of artificial moonlight. Lumina's environmental control systems had scheduled a nostalgic lunar glow tonight, bathing the city in silvery luminescence that did nothing to calm his agitation. "You're wearing a path in the floor," a voice observed from the shadows. Dominic didn't startle. Vampires of his lineage had evolved beyond such reflexes, but his eyes narrowed as Naira emerged from behind the derelict telescope mechanism. "How did you find this place?" he demanded. "You're not as difficult to track as you believe." She approached with that distinctive gait, part glide, part careful negotiation with gravity. "Your emotional resonance leaves traces." "My what?" "Think of it as psychological footprints," Naira explained, running her hand along the edge of an ancient star chart. "Most beings emit them, but yours have a distinctive signature." The moonlight caught the subtle iridescence of her skin, creating patterns that shouldn't have been possible under standard optical physics. Tonight she wore simpler attire, a fitted bodysuit of material that seemed to absorb and redirect ambient light, making her simultaneously more visible and more difficult to focus on. "You're trespassing," Dominic said, though without genuine venom. "I'm continuing research." She removed the now familiar crystalline device from a compartment in her suit. "And I've made a discovery that requires your attention." The device projected its holographic display, but what appeared was unlike the emotional signatures she'd shown him previously. This was a map of Lumina, overlaid with spiraling patterns of energy that pulsed and shifted like living things. "What am I looking at?" he asked, despite his determination to remain disinterested. "Resonance patterns," Naira replied, expanding the display with a gesture. "They're forming throughout the city, emanating from locations where we've interacted." Dominic studied the projection. Sure enough, glowing nodes marked the cafe, the street corner where they'd first met, and several other locations they'd visited together. From these points, intricate energy patterns spiraled outward, interconnecting in complex geometric formations. "Explain," he said tersely. "I can't, entirely." For the first time, Naira looked genuinely puzzled. "It's unprecedented. These patterns resemble Tellurian empathic networks, but they shouldn't be possible in beings without quantum consciousness." "You're saying our conversations are creating energy fields?" "Not just energy fields." She adjusted the display, zooming out until the map encompassed not just Lumina, but its surrounding territories. The patterns extended far beyond the city limits, reaching toward the stars. "They're creating resonance points, emotional beacons." Dominic frowned. "To what purpose?" "Unknown," Naira admitted. "But they're growing stronger, and they're affecting the city." As if to confirm her assessment, the artificial moonlight intensified momentarily, casting shadows that moved slightly out of sync with their sources. In the distance, Lumina's central spires flickered with unexpected illumination patterns, lights powering on and off in sequential waves that resembled the spiraling formations in Naira's projection. "That's not a scheduled lighting event," Dominic observed. "No," Naira agreed. "It's a response. The city's neural network is reacting to our resonance pattern." Dominic moved closer to the projection, examining the intricate dance of energy with growing concern. "You didn't anticipate this when you began your research." It wasn't a question, but Naira answered anyway. "No. I expected to document an isolated anomaly, Instead, I've discovered what appears to be an emerging symbiotic relationship between your consciousness, mine, and the quantum substrate of this region. In simpler terms, we're changing things," she said, her eyes reflecting the pulsing patterns. "Our interactions are creating ripples in reality." Outside, the artificial rain that had been scheduled for atmospheric maintenance abruptly ceased. Instead, actual moisture condensed from the air, forming droplets that fell in patterns too precise to be natural. They struck the observatory dome in a rhythm that sounded almost like code. "Is this dangerous?" Dominic asked, watching as the projection expanded further, revealing tendrils of energy now extending toward Lumina's orbital platforms. "Not inherently," Naira said, though her tone lacked its usual certainty. "But it's accelerating." The pattern is gaining complexity and influence faster than my models predicted. She deactivated the projection and moved to the observatory's main viewport. The transparent section of the dome offered a panoramic view of Lumina, its perpetual twilight now interrupted by synchronized flashes of light that traced geometric patterns across the cityscape. "I've seen something similar before," she said quietly. "In ancient texts describing the convergence of Mira." "What's that?" Dominic found himself standing beside her, close enough to notice that her scent was unlike any terrestrial being, something like ozone and crystallized starlight. "A mythological event from Tellurian history," she explained. "When two fundamentally different forms of consciousness achieved harmonic resonance, creating a cascade of reality-altering effects." "Mythology isn't data," Dominic pointed out. "Most mythology begins as incompletely understood science," Naira countered. The convergence was dismissed as legend until archaeological evidence was discovered in the ruins of the Seventh Nebula. Below them, Lumina's citizens had begun to notice the anomalous light patterns. Crowds gathered in plazas, faces turned upward in collective wonder. The city's emotional regulation systems should have dampened such spontaneous gatherings, yet they continued to grow. "Your people are approaching this incorrectly," Dominic said, gesturing toward the gathering crowds. "Mass emotional responses attract predators." "Like you?" Naira asked, her violet eyes studying him with that now familiar analytical intensity. "Not me," he clarified. "But there are others in Lumina who feed on different spectra of emotion. Fear, wonder, confusion, all are sustenance to something." As if summoned by his assessment, shapes detached from the shadows between buildings. Elongated, fluid forms that moved with predatory purpose toward the assembled crowds. Emotional leeches, Dominic identified them. Parasites that attach to heightened emotional states and drain them, leaving apathy in their wake. "They're beautiful," Naira murmured, watching the shadowy entities weave through the unsuspecting crowds. Dominic gave her a sidelong glance. "You have unusual aesthetic preferences." "All life is fascinating," she replied. "Even parasitic forms." Her crystalline device emitted a soft, alert tone. When she activated it, the projection showed new data, a massive energy signature forming in orbit above Lumina. "That's not from the city systems," Dominic observed. "No," Naira confirmed, her expression growing serious. "It's responding to our resonance pattern. Something is coming." The projection expanded to show a vessel entering Lumina's orbital space, a ship of unfamiliar design, its hull composed of interlocking geometric shapes that continuously reconfigured themselves. "Tellurian?" Dominic asked. "No." For the first time, Naira looked genuinely concerned. "It's a harmonic collector. They're drawn to unusual consciousness patterns." "Hostile?" "Not intentionally," she said. "But they harvest resonance phenomena for study. The process can be destabilizing for the source." Dominic's eyes narrowed as he processed this information. "They're hunting us." "In a manner of speaking," Naira acknowledged, though they would consider it scientific acquisition rather than hunting. Below, the emotional leeches had begun attaching themselves to citizens in the gathering crowds. As they fed, the synchronized light patterns across the city faltered momentarily before stabilizing in new, more complex configurations. "The parasites are actually stabilizing the resonance," Naira observed with surprise. "They're filtering the emotional output, refining the pattern." Dominic moved away from the viewport, his decision already made. "We need to leave Lumina." "Leave?" Naira turned to him, her elongated ears twitching with surprise. "The research potential here is extraordinary. The interaction between our resonance pattern and these indigenous emotional predators alone could." "Will get us harvested by your harmonic collectors," Dominic interrupted. "You said yourself the resonance is accelerating. If we stay, we'll become the epicenter of whatever happens next." "That's precisely why we should remain," Naira argued. "To document the progression." "At what cost?" Dominic gestured toward the city, where the light patterns had begun to affect infrastructure. Transportation tubes pulsed with synchronized energy. Architectural elements shifted and realigned in response to the spreading pattern. "Your academic curiosity could destabilize an entire population." Naira studied him for a long moment, her head tilted in that distinctive analytical angle. "You're concerned for them," she finally said. "The humans." "I'm concerned about disruption," he corrected. "No," she insisted, stepping closer. "You care what happens to them." Despite your predatory nature, you've developed a protective instinct toward your hunting grounds. They're my food source, Dominic said flatly. Nothing more. Then why feed only on those who transgress your moral code? She challenged. Why not simply take what you need from anyone? Dominic didn't answer immediately. The question probed at something he had never fully articulated, even to himself. Optimization, he finally said. The guilty taste better. Naira's expression suggested she didn't believe him, but she didn't press further. Instead, she returned her attention to her device, which now showed the harmonic collector ship establishing a stable orbit and extending what appeared to be sensory apparatus toward the city. If we leave, she said slowly, the resonance pattern would follow us. We could draw the collectors away from Lumina. Exactly, but we would still be their primary target. Dominic's mouth curved into something that resembled a smile, but contained too many predatory elements for comfort. I'm rather difficult to harvest. Naira considered this, her fingers dancing across her device's interface as she ran calculations. My ship has advanced cloaking capabilities, she offered. It might mask our resonance signature long enough to establish sufficient distance. Then it's decided, Dominic said. We leave tonight. My research will continue elsewhere, he interrupted. Unless you prefer to become a specimen in someone else's collection. Naira's ears flattened slightly, a gesture he had come to recognize as reluctant agreement. Very well, but I'll need to retrieve equipment from my temporary laboratory. Where is it? The abandoned psychometric testing facility in the upper western quadrant, she replied. I've been using their outdated emotional amplification chambers for calibration purposes. Dominic nodded. I know it. We'll go together. The streets won't be safe with those emotional leeches feeding openly. As if emphasizing his point, a distant scream echoed from the city below, the first sign that the citizens of Lumina were beginning to notice their uninvited parasites. We have approximately 3 hours before the collectors complete their preliminary scan and begin targeted extraction procedures, Naira calculated, securing her device. After that, movement will become significantly more hazardous. Then we move quickly, Dominic said, already heading toward the observatory's exit. And hope your ship is as capable as you claim. Naira followed, her movements now purposeful and precise. It's called the quantum resonator, she informed him. And it's significantly more interesting than its name suggests. As they descended from the observatory, Lumina continued its unexpected transformation. The resonance patterns spread like living circuitry through the city's neural network, rewriting scheduled emotional weather and replacing it with something new, something neither fully human nor alien, but a hybrid consciousness emerging from the unlikely connection between a vampire and a xenocultural researcher. Above, the harmonic collector ship extended additional sensory apparatus, its configuration shifting as it honed in on the unique resonance signature that had drawn it across interstellar distances. The hunt had begun. The journey. The quantum resonator defied Dominic's expectations. He had anticipated something sleek and clinical, a vessel that reflected Naira's analytical precision. Instead, the ship resembled an elaborate dream caught mid-transformation. Its hull shifted between states of matter, never fully solid or liquid, but something in between. Geometric patterns flowed across its surface like conscious circuitry, occasionally forming symbols that seemed vaguely familiar before dissolving back into beautiful chaos. It's alive? Dominic asked as they approached the vessel, which hovered silently in an abandoned freight depot on Lumina's outer ring. Not exactly, Naira replied, her fingers dancing across a control panel that materialized from thin air. The resonator exists in a state of quantum indeterminacy. It's simultaneously a vehicle, a research instrument, and an extension of consciousness. The ship responded to her presence, a section of the hull reconfiguring to form an entrance. The opening pulsed with soft bioluminescence, almost like a greeting. Will it accept me? Dominic asked, eyeing the entrance with justified suspicion. It's already calibrating to your quantum signature, Naira assured him. Though I should mention that vampiric consciousness tends to create interesting harmonic variations in the ship's systems. Define interesting. Nothing dangerous, she said, then added after a pause, probably. Above them, Lumina's artificial sky rippled with unsanctioned energy patterns. The harmonic collector ship was now visible even to the naked eye, a massive, fractal structure that continuously folded and unfolded itself as it scanned the city below. We're running out of time, Dominic observed. Naira nodded and stepped through the entrance. After a moment's hesitation, Dominic followed. The interior of the quantum resonator defied conventional spatial geometry. Corridors curved in directions that shouldn't have been possible, leading to chambers that seemed larger than the ship's external dimensions would allow. The walls pulsed with soft light that adjusted its spectrum in response to their presence. The navigation center is this way, Naira said, leading him through a passageway that felt simultaneously too long and too short. They emerged into what Dominic assumed was the ship's bridge, though it bore little resemblance to any control room he had encountered in his centuries of existence. There were no visible instruments, only a central platform surrounded by shifting holographic displays that responded to Naira's movements. Prepare for departure protocols, she instructed, and the ship hummed in acknowledgement. It understands you? The resonator and I share a symbiotic relationship, Naira explained, her hands moving through the holographic interfaces with practiced precision. My thoughts influence its functions, and its systems enhance my perceptual abilities. The displays around them shifted, showing multiple views of Lumina. The resonance pattern they had inadvertently created now covered the entire city, pulsing in time with some unseen cosmic rhythm. The pattern has stabilized, Naira observed. It's self-sustaining now, even without our direct presence. Is that good or bad? Neither. It's evolution. She completed a complex sequence of gestures, and the ship's internal lighting dimmed slightly. Cloaking systems activated. We should be masked from the collector's initial scans. The quantum resonator began to rise, its movement so smooth that Dominic would not have noticed if not for the changing view through the translucent sections of the hull. Lumina receded beneath them, its twilight cityscape now transformed by intricate patterns of light that flowed like luminous rivers through its architecture. Where are we going? Dominic asked, realizing he had neglected this rather important detail in their hasty departure. Sector Q0, Naira replied, her focus still on the navigation controls. It's a region of anomalous space approximately 12 parsecs from the solar system. And what's in Sector Q0? Nothing, she said. That's why it's interesting. Before Dominic could question this dubious logic, the holographic displays flashed a warning. The harmonic collector ship had adjusted its position and was now extending what appeared to be a capture mechanism toward them. They've detected us, Naira confirmed, her movements becoming more urgent. Quantum drive initiating. The space around the ship seemed to fold inward. Dominic felt a momentary sensation of being simultaneously compressed and expanded, as if every atom in his body was being gently questioned about its purpose in the universe. Then they were elsewhere, the stars around them arranged in unfamiliar patterns. Did we escape? Dominic asked once the disorientation subsided. Temporarily, Naira replied, studying the displays. The collectors have technology that can track quantum resonance signatures across vast distances. They'll follow. Then why flee to empty space? Wouldn't a populated system offer more protection? We're not seeking protection, Naira said, turning to face him fully. We're seeking answers. The displays shifted again, now showing the resonance pattern that connected them. It had grown more complex during their transit, developing new geometric configurations that pulsed with increasing frequency. Our pattern is evolving, she explained, accelerating towards some form of completion. I need to understand what happens at the culmination point. And if what happens is catastrophic, then we'll be in empty space, Naira said simply, minimizing potential damage. Dominic studied her for a long moment. You're not just researching me anymore, are you? This has become something else. Naira's ears flattened slightly, that subtle tell he'd come to recognize as discomfort with direct emotional confrontation. The scope of my research has expanded, she admitted. What began as a study of your unique consciousness has evolved into an investigation of emergent quantum phenomena that shouldn't be possible. Phenomena caused by our interaction. Yes, she confirmed. Our consciousnesses are generating harmonic resonance patterns that defy existing models of quantum psychology. It's unprecedented. The ship adjusted its course, moving deeper into the emptiness of Sector Q0. Here, the stars seemed dimmer, more distant, as if reluctant to illuminate this forgotten corner of the cosmos. How long until the collectors find us? Dominic asked. Approximately 16 hours, assuming standard pursuit protocols, Naira replied. She gestured to a nearby section of the ship, which reconfigured into what might generously be called seating accommodations. You should rest. The transition to quantum space can be taxing on non-Tellurian physiology. I don't require rest, Dominic reminded her. Vampire, remember? Even vampires need to process new experiences, she countered. And quantum displacement is definitely new for you. As if to validate her assessment, Dominic felt an unfamiliar sensation, not fatigue exactly, but a sort of temporal dissonance, as if parts of his consciousness were still catching up to their new location. Fine, he conceded, settling onto the offered surface, which adjusted its molecular structure to accommodate his form. But I want to know more about these collectors. What exactly do they collect? Naira joined him, sitting cross-legged on a section of floor that rippled like liquid before solidifying beneath her. The ship dimmed its lighting in response, creating an atmosphere almost reminiscent of a campfire setting. If campfires could exist in quantum indeterminate space. The harmonic collectors are an ancient species, she began. Some xenoarchaeologists believe they predate the formation of this galaxy. They perceive reality primarily through consciousness patterns rather than physical stimuli. They're consciousness hunters, Dominic summarized. In a manner of speaking, Naira agreed. They seek out unique forms of awareness and preserve them in what you might call consciousness archives, vast repositories of experiential data. They kill their subjects? No, they sample them. Extract a quantum imprint that contains the essential patterns of thought and experience. The process doesn't harm the subject physically, but it can leave them diminished. Soulless, Dominic suggested. Naira considered this. Your mythological concept of soul is surprisingly apt in this context. Yes, one might say the collectors harvest souls, though they would describe it as preserving the quantum essence of consciousness for perpetual study. The displays around them shifted again, now showing the pursuing collector ship. It had already entered quantum transit, its fractal structure even more elaborate in this state, like a cathedral built from living mathematics. And they want us because our resonance pattern is unique? More than unique, Naira said. It's generative. Most consciousness patterns are stable. They maintain a consistent quantum signature. Ours is creating new configurations, evolving towards some unknown state. To the collectors, that's the equivalent of discovering a new form of life. Dominic absorbed this information, watching as the ship's displays tracked the evolution of their shared resonance pattern. The geometric formations had become increasingly complex, occasionally forming structures that resembled organic neural networks before dissolving and reconfiguring. You still haven't explained why we're heading to empty space, he noted. If we're being pursued, shouldn't we be looking for allies or defenses? We are, Naira replied, activating a new display that showed the entirety of Sector Cunal. But not the kind you're thinking of. The display zoomed in on what appeared to be absolute emptiness. Then, as the sensor resolution increased, a faint distortion became visible, a subtle warping of space-time that pulsed with an almost imperceptible rhythm. What is that? Dominic asked. The Tuluvian texts call it the echo chamber, Naira explained. A naturally occurring quantum resonance amplifier. It's been detecting and enhancing consciousness patterns for millennia. And you think it will help us? How exactly? By accelerating our resonance evolution, she said. If we can reach completion before the collectors intercept us, they won't be able to sample our consciousness patterns effectively. We'll have transformed beyond their collection parameters. Dominic stared at her. You're gambling that whatever we're becoming will be too complex for them to capture. Yes. Without knowing what we're becoming. Also yes. He shook his head. That's either brilliant or suicidal. The distinction is often negligible in pioneering research, Naira said with the faintest suggestion of a smile. The ship continued its journey through the emptiness, its quantum drive humming with what Dominic could have sworn was anticipation. Around them, the displays tracked both their pursuer and their destination, the invisible pulse that waited in the void. 16 hours, Dominic mused. What does one do for 16 hours while fleeing consciousness hunters and evolving into an unknown state of being? Naira's expression brightened. I have extensive files on vampire mythology across 17 galactic cultures. I've been meaning to verify their accuracy with a primary source. Despite everything, Dominic found himself almost smiling. You're still conducting research? No. Of course, she replied, as if it were the most natural thing in the universe. Just because we're experiencing an unprecedented quantum evolution while being pursued by ancient consciousness collectors doesn't mean we should abandon scientific methodology. And so, as the quantum resonator carried them deeper into the emptiness of Sector Cunal, toward an invisible heartbeat that might transform them beyond recognition, Dominic Vanthorne, ancient vampire and reluctant research subject, found himself explaining the inaccuracies of interstellar vampire mythology to an alien xenocultural researcher whose ears twitched with scholarly excitement at each revelation. Somewhere in the void between them, the resonance pattern continued its silent evolution, weaving their consciousnesses together in configurations that neither science nor mythology had ever anticipated. The echo chamber waited. The collectors pursued. And in the quiet center of cosmic uncertainty, something new continued to form, a connection that transcended the conventional boundaries of mind, matter, and the space between stars.